All right. What's up, everybody? This is Marshall Couture of MarshMakesArt.com, and you're listening to the Escape Artist Podcast, episode number 94, which I don't always know the number, but today I know the number. And today we have special guest, Mr. Mike Emeritz. How you doing, man?
What's up, dude?
If you don't know, I mean, everybody who's watching this probably knows, but Mike Emeritz is doing the 100 Days of Making Comics. This is his second round, and he's in the midst of that. And yeah, he's also does a lot of other things. I guess let them know like where they can find you and what you're all about in a nutshell.
Oh man. All right. Well, I'm Mike. I right now I'm just working on making my own comics. That's pretty much like my main thing right now. Trying to get my own books out. You can. Oh, where is that site? It's tapastic.com. I've got my comic Space Cat. That's going to be coming out in August, I think. And also working on a graphic novel, which is called Space Cat as well. They're two completely different things, though. They're just kind of like the same premise taken in two different directions. It's this real experimental kind of thing. Other than that, by day I do freelance whatever I can get my hands on, which at the moment is doing a stop motion animation for a little production company in Ireland. And that's about it, man. That's all I got going on at the moment. And I'm doing laundry. I'm doing some laundry too.
There you go. Nice. So yeah, I'm just kind of posting up the link real quick. I always forget about posting up the link, and then I'm going to check the chat, make sure we're keeping up with the chat a little bit too. But
cool.
yeah. So person publish. And yeah, so what I want to talk about today is concept design and basically like creating characters, kind of building your world, when you're creating a comic and things. And yeah, so I guess, as artists we've all had those times, especially a lot of people who listen are, comic book artists or writers. And if you do that kind of thing, you're going to be creating characters. You're going to be doing all this kind of it's kind of weird for me because I don't know, like I'm, I guess, somewhere in the novice realm. I've kind of created characters all my life, but it's more been just like a fun thing that I kind of do when the inspiration hits, and I haven't done it quite professionally, so it's not like, if the inspiration is there, I have a hard time pushing myself. And I'm learning now through like doing 100 Days of Making Comics and stuff like that. But, a lot of times I sit here and I'm like trying to create something, and I just feel like I'm so far away from like even knowing how to start sometimes. Like right now I'm creating Sophia the Conqueror, and just her like look. And so I have to look up images of, because she's a 9-year-old girl, I have to look up images of, girls or just like little kids really in general, try to figure out how to draw kids, because that's a whole, thing on its own. And then, I have to start looking up, what a conqueror or a warrior would wear, and stuff like that. So, and then that range is like all over the place. So it's like now I have to like choose. That's the hard thing too, is just choosing, what what things to add and keep and subtract and all that stuff. So, I don't know. But I guess you said you've done this kind of professionally at times, and you're also doing a lot of it with Space Cat, especially since you're working on like two totally different versions of it.
Yeah.
Do you have like kind of a normal like approach to it, or is it different every time, or how do you usually, approach creating characters and environments and things like that?
Well, There's a lot of moving parts, that's for sure. I definitely hear what you're saying about, you've got the aspect of whether a character is young or old. You've got the element of like you want to make her a warrior, so like what kind of warrior and all that kind of stuff. I'd say it's usually different every time for me, but most of the time I try to I'm trying to think of a good way to like kind of ground the perspective, because I've done concept for different things. So let's say a good example. Okay, so like a good example I could give was this film that I was working on. We needed a monster, and we had a finished script for that. And so I think having like a good script, a good story basis is like a foundation helps to kind of spring off of, because then you can start asking questions like, all right, well, what time period is it in? What kind of monster is it? Like, is this like some kind of shadow creature, or is this like a physical kind of monster? That kind of thing. Like, just as many, I guess, details as possible to kind of help you, springboard the idea, helps you get going. And then from there, I guess working professionally, you're usually making something for somebody else. So you don't have as much control over how it's going to look. So you usually have to ask a lot of questions, do you want this or do you want that? So I would usually get like a bunch of reference photos and stuff, just to kind of start steering the idea in a direction, especially with people who aren't that creative themselves too. They like seeing pictures. Talking is probably the worst thing you could do, because they'll go, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And then you'll show them and they'll be like, that's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I
Yeah, like,
imagine. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, from there, like after they've seen like a bunch of reference, then you can kind of get a feel for what they're expecting, and then from there, kind of just start playing around, with ideas, and from there, I mean, we could go pretty deep, I guess, on different ways to do that, but
Right. So I guess, yeah, it's a different beast when you're working for a client as opposed to, figuring out, working for yourself, on your
definitely,
own projects. And so, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different branches you can kind of go down to figure this out. And I guess since we're both creating our own comics, I mean, it's good to glean from the professional too, so hopefully we can get some of that too. But I think maybe one of the biggest challenges is just decision making. Like, I mean, even I don't know. Maybe I'm having more struggle with it because it's a little overwhelming because I'm doing literally 12 stories and not just one.
that could be it. That could be it.
But it's like the other thing is like I've created, because I have the one story called Lizard Brain. So I got a bunch of monsters with that in that, and the monsters aren't even that important to the story. I mean, they are, but they're not. Like, they're kind of almost set pieces. And but those were the fun parts to create, so that's why I've created a lot of those so far. Um, but
And
like
those
just
are really
normal
cool too.
people, like, thanks, I appreciate it. But just like, how do you approach even just like normal kind of looking people like that aren't even in a fantasy realm, like, and even deciding like, and this might sound weird, but like it's hard for me to decide like even what race people are, like what
Mm.
age, what gender, like those. Sometimes I go back and forth and like certain characters, like, oh, it's a girl, no, it's a guy, no, it's a girl, and it's like I don't even know that. Like, and so how do you like? I don't know. For some reason, I have a hard time making decisions. Even in that realm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean, because I've actually gone through a lot of that with the Space Cat graphic novel. Let me see if I could. I might have some examples of what I'm talking about, and maybe I could pull some stuff up.
Hmm.
But like one character specifically, Lucas, in he was tough, and having some trouble loading thumbnails right now, but once they load up, then I'll show you. But like when I first came up with these characters, Dougie and Lucas, it was it was Jim and Dougie. These are terrible, terrible doodles. But I wanted them to be like you know, conspiracy theorist kind of types, and you know, maybe a little bit like rough around the edges, you know, traveling types, you know. And
Right.
so I just sort of laid down like a random doodle, like, all right, this is Dougie and Jim, moving on, you know. And then I just kind of kept writing and just left it alone for a while. But as the story developed, I really just didn't like the dynamic of Dougie and Jim. I felt like I'd seen them before, like a bunch of times, you know. And I started doing silhouettes to kind of like play around with how each character was going to look in silhouette to make sure that they were different. And something about, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but something about this guy right here, and this was supposed to be Jim, he just suddenly didn't look like that same character anymore. And I had this idea to just make him African American instead. And like just that alone sort of made the story a little bit more interesting as well, because they, you know, Dougie is actually, he's like a police officer, and I changed his name to Lucas too for no good reason whatsoever. I just decided to change the name, but I thought there was like a different, something a little bit more interesting there, just a little bit different of a dynamic than just like two white guys who are buddies. Like I feel like we've seen that a lot before, and this seems something that, you know, maybe not to me, but to like your average person would seem less likely to be friends. You know, this guy who's like obviously middle-aged, and then this much younger, like 20-something-year-old kid. And it really had nothing to do with his race as much as it had to do with his age. But the race just kind of came with it, I guess. And since then, Lucas has become one of my favorite characters. And I actually changed his age again and made him even younger, which I don't have any examples currently for like a younger version of him now. But yeah, I don't know. And so I guess in that sense, it's more of like just an organic kind of process. Like it changed and developed just out of necessity. You know, I didn't really like sit down and say, I'm going to make the perfect character right now. He just sort of like, you know, evolved. And now I feel like I know him a lot better because, and this might sound kind of crazy, but I feel like he's sort of revealed himself, you know, as time has gone on and the story's gone on now. He's got a lot more of like a personality than he did before. So he started out as this throwaway character named Jim, you know, and now he's Lucas, who's pretty much like the central character in the graphic novel now. So yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. I heard you talk about Lucas before, and I don't know why I miss so many details, but it's probably because half the time I'm just listening to the YouTube videos because like I might be driving or something, and so yeah, like I don't know if you've shown pictures or not, but I didn't even realize he was African American.
Well, and that's good too, because, you know, like I'm not really telling a story that, you know, has to deal with race. Like I'm not telling a story about, culture clash or even different cultures or anything. I'm just telling a story. So I'm glad that you didn't notice, you know, because it was
Yeah,
I didn't want to bring attention to it. And on that similar subject, that's actually something that I really have noticed and liked a lot about the show The Flash. There's a lot of African American characters in that show, but it's not, they don't need to be, and it's not like they don't bring attention to it. And I like that, because the world's diverse, and, you know, just because you have characters of different nationalities and cultures doesn't mean you have to, like, beat people over the head with it, you know? Like,
yeah. I think it's an interesting topic though, like making that decision, because I actually do kind of struggle with that a lot, because I don't know, there's been quotes and stuff, and obviously race is always a hot button topic. And there's like somebody said something about, like, I don't know, they basically the off balanceness of, what you see in like Hollywood and TV shows and all this stuff and comic books and everything really in the
Yeah.
media. It's always it's more often than not it's a group of white characters, and then there's like the token, black guy and that whole thing. And you know and it's funny because like most of my characters so far just happen to have been black, and I didn't even think about it. It's just because I was making a comic about hip hop, and not that they have to be black to be in hip hop, but it just that's how it happened. I didn't even really think about it.
Yeah.
Um, and to be honest, like until somebody was talking about race in comics, I wasn't even thinking like I almost forgot my characters were mostly like black and stuff like because it's hip hop, it's just people, that's how I look at it. But sometimes like especially with making these 12 stories and there's so many characters, I am tempted to like, should I put more people of different races like I almost feel like I'm sometimes intentionally trying to do that,
Mm.
or also sometimes I just automatically think of a character as a certain race, and then like one of my characters is an African American, and they're kind of doing what might be a stereotype, an African American stereotype, like job or whatever.
Mm.
Maybe like in the past, like, and I didn't mean it that way. That's how I was thinking of the character or whatever. And I almost, even though like I still want that character to be who that character is, I almost want like am tempted to change the race just because I don't want to like do a stereotype or something. But I think it's almost impossible to avoid it sometimes, because it's
Yeah.
just like I'm not
Yeah.
even thinking about that, and then it just happens, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Tough, and it's like I think it goes back to the old saying of like write what you know kind of thing. And so I feel like the reason that there's that's become kind of like a common thing for there not to be so much diversity is because the people writing it don't know diversity,
Hmm.
And so I think for it to work, it's got to happen kind of naturally.
Right.
If you try to force it, then you end up with like and nothing against the Power Rangers, but you end up with that kind of scenario where like you have equal representation, but it's forced. It's not
Right.
natural.
Yeah. And then the
But
other
yeah,
thing too is like, you can get into that thing, well, this is a black show or this is a white show or something like that. And it's like, why
yeah,
does it even have to be that? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like you want it to be for everybody, definitely. And then it comes down to like I don't know, it's tough because where I grew up, I'd say this is being generous to my white friends, but I'd say like 90% of my friends growing up were all black, and like that was like my second family. So I never really saw the like the problem, I guess, in the
yeah,
same way. Like I didn't have to grow to like realize it. It was kind of always like just a joke to our group of friends, like we just knew that
right.
there was this sort of disconnect out in the world. But if someone like I don't know, a lot of people have a problem with Todd McFarlane's Spawn because he's a black character, but he's a white guy making a black character, and it's like I don't know where you draw the line. I feel like as long as you stick to the right what then I think it'll all work out. I don't know if Todd McFarlane knows anything about the black experience, but he knows superheroes, and it's a really compelling superhero story.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. As far as like a choice, I'd say go with your gut and do what feels right. Like
Yeah.
I'll go back to my Lucas example. Like I wasn't thinking about race. I just decided to try and make him black as like a design choice.
Right.
Not necessarily about skin tone, but just personality of character. Type of character. It's just something else in my Rolodex of reference that I could pull from.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of how it feels with me too, because same situation. I mean, I've always lived in suburban places that were like right next to the city. So it's always been, a big mixture, and it's almost like I just don't think about it. And also me being into hip hop and being so involved with that, growing up, I mean,
Hmm.
it was all, again, a big mixture. So I don't really even, think about it too much. But, then when you're creating these things and you got all these characters, you might find yourself like almost double or second guessing yourself,
Hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, because that's like your reader isn't going to necessarily know your experience either. So,
Right.
I might write a character and I might have that character say some stuff that's like super stereotypical. And someone who doesn't know me might think like, oh man, that dude's totally racist, or he's being, he's playing on stereotypes or whatever. And they
Right.
may not know that I'm like basing it off of my best friend's sisters or something. That it's
Right.
like
Right.
I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm just, making people. But it's tough, man. And I'd say like, I don't know. You could go either way. You could be really controversial and just throw caution to the wind and say whatever, I'm going to make what I'm going to make, or you could be hypersensitive about it and just choose to not touch it. I
Yeah, I
don't know
mean,
what.
we could just make comics about just lizards and cats, and we'll be okay.
Exactly. A nondescript cat too. He's not a tabby. He's not a calico.
Yeah, actually, that was a hard decision for me. Like like because I have that one here kitty story, and it's like, okay, what kind of kitty? I almost don't even know different kinds of cats because I don't know. Like it's not like I think it's a little different. Like for some reason, dogs people know kinds of dogs a lot more than they know kinds of cats, and that's kind of how I grew up for some reason. But
Yeah.
but it's like I'm looking up reference, and I'm like, I don't even know. Like I just wrote a story about a cat. Now I got to figure out what kind of cat it is. So
Yeah,
funny.
that was the easy part for me because I'm basing Space Cat off of our cat, so
Right.
it's like there we go, done.
Yeah. And I could do that too, but I think I just imagined the cat in my story a different color than the ones I
Yeah,
have for
that
some
is
reason.
tough too. And you bring up a really good point actually with the animals and stuff. Because like I guess you could kind of think of things in a completely different way. Like let's approach it from like just the design standpoint. Like you could think about a character design just based on color combinations, or like in using animals or imaginary characters. Specifically, you could do like things that are harmonious, like maybe a purple character and an orange character and a green character, and their color schemes work well together. But with people, that becomes a little bit, I guess, difficult because we tend to have a lot of history with classifying people by color, by skin color. And I think that's where it becomes maybe more of a problem. But
Mm.
you you could you could think about it that way anyways in terms of design, and just mix up the races and cultures and stuff just based purely on design, having nothing to do with the actual culture, the actual race of a person, but just how well they fit together, I guess, design wise,
Yeah.
like.
It's kind of funny, yeah, like you could do the design thing, and I think that kind of sounds like that's like you said with Lucas, that's kind of almost how you did that.
Mhm.
Um, but even that, maybe you were thinking of some stereotype situations because like I have this one story, it's the horror story kind of thing I got going, and it's two roommates, two dudes, two college like roommate type thing. And I started writing the story, and I was writing, the way I started it, they're sitting on the couch, and one guy's like yelling at the TV because and like freaked out at like this horror movie they're watching or whatever, and the other one's laughing at him. And you know, like I automatically like because the stereotypes out there and I'm not thinking about it, you hear that story of like African Americans yelling at the TV screen or movie screen or whatever. It's just something that is in our culture. And I was like, I literally like purposefully made the other guy, you know, the guy who was yelling at the screen, white. Like, I almost feel sometimes like I'm trying to buck the system on purpose.
Yeah. Maybe trying not too hard, but yeah, you know, that's, I think that's good. You know, I think that's great. I mean,
Yeah,
just
I mean,
coming from the experience of growing up in a real diverse group of friends, like, you know, the stereotypes came up every once in a while and we would all poke fun, but I mean, at the end of the day, people are people, you know.
yeah.
Everybody's going to react just the way that they're going to react, and I think that's good. I like that. I like the idea of like just reverse it. You know.
And I mean, I tend to do that with everything. Like, anyway, I think that might be an artist thing, anyways. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but
Oh,
like,
that's
I'm always like trying. Like, if something normally goes one way, I'm like, I'm gonna be the one guy who's doing it the other way.
yeah, like a rebellion kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is in me. I definitely think it's an artist thing, at least in my case.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, and you want to
It's
be
just,
different too, you know, and I think making choices that haven't been made before is that's a good way to start anything too, you know.
I think I just get tired of seeing the same old thing is the problem.
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
Me too. I get angry watching television shows and stuff and seeing the same stuff again and again, especially when it's stereotypes and especially when it's like stuff that I don't know. It just smacks of like unoriginality, you know. Like it's one thing for something to be a stereotype, and it's another thing for it to just never end, you know.
Yeah,
Like to just, you know, you can't interpret this person any different way. Like, come on.
yeah. You know, it's funny, like I have kind of a funny one that's like not hitting on, you know, crazy topics that people get up in arms about, but there's that whole like thing where in so many movies, and I guess I don't even know where it originated from. Maybe it was from like spy movies. I don't know. It could be a million things. I know they have them in soap operas a lot. But there's always, I laugh, I always joke about this. Like, there's always these scenes where people are standing around talking to each other and somebody's serving them drinks. And I'm like, what is that? That is not, I've never had that in my life. And I know it's like a cocktail party, but like, I'm like,
Oh
this
yeah, I know what
is
you
this
mean.
like a normal thing that happens in other people's lives? Because I've never once been in that situation where I'm standing around and somebody's serving me a drink. Like, what is this? But it happens in like so many shows and
Yeah.
movies, and
You talking about like they have like the little tray with the drinks on it, and they walk up. And,
yeah, you get
yeah,
people walking around with the trays, and like it just dawned on me because it's like so normal, like for that to be in any show or movie. And
yeah.
I thought about it, I'm like, wait a minute, when does that actually happen? Why is this in every story?
I don't know, man. I've never encountered that either. Like I worked in hospitality for a while, and that's about as close as I've ever came to anything like that. But I was the one serving the drink, so a
Yeah. I
little
mean, I
different.
guess like kind of like a wedding is like that a little, maybe. I don't know. But it's still
Yeah,
not the same thing, really. But
no, it doesn't just happen.
it's just
You're
like
like,
these people just have parties, and I think it's just a different world than I'm from.
yeah, that's probably what it is. You know, like I don't know, people with a lot more money or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's all kinds of things like that. Like it's like, oh, I've seen that scene before. I know what's going to happen here. And a lot of times, me and my wife are sitting there, you know, watching shows, and I'm like, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and that person's not going to die because they're like the main character. And she's like,
Yeah,
she's just like, how do you know? I'm like, because it happens in every other show.
yeah, for years.
Yeah. And then, like, sometimes it's me just being like too knee deep in writing, and I'm like, I have to like get out of that and be like, oh, sorry, I'm probably messing this up for you, but like it's just because I've been writing so much. Like I'm
Hmm.
used to thinking ahead of in some of these things, you know.
Yeah, I know it can kind of ruin it sometimes when you start writing a lot and when you get really into, especially if you're working on a story, it can kind of ruin entertainment for you for a while.
Yeah.
I've gone through some phases where it's like I just get sick of everything because you're right, it becomes kind of predictable, and that can be frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right. So, a lot of rabbit trails, but that's to be expected. So I guess, back on the concept design thing, you know, there's decision making, and that's always, that's tough. There's a lot of I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things with creating comics and writing is like that's almost like the hardest thing for me is making decisions on what things should happen. I mean, you get like the basic ideas, but then there's like all these details and stuff, so how do you build that out? And
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something I've been learning that might apply to it, which is like the whole like general to specific thing. Like, you start with the basic idea, even like just like an outline or something like that, and then you start building the details in, and that's when the decisions come in. But I don't know, you're kind of knee deep in creating a world right now, and like how did you come up
Yeah.
maybe with some of the decisions, even the decision to like kind of make it more of like a almost like a rock climbing, or not rock climbing, but like just a place where it's caverns and all that kind of stuff. Like, how did that all come about?
That is an interesting question. That's a good question. Let's see. All right. So the way that it's like, so basically you're asking like kind of how it got to where it's at now from where it was in the graphic novel.
Yeah,
Okay.
that and just your initial idea for what this webcomic was. Like, I almost feel like when you started talking about the webcomic, I don't know, like it was like, okay, you're gonna make some kind of funny short things, maybe like one page comics. I feel like it seemed like
Yeah.
that was the direction you were going, and then now it's like an epic story almost. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. You would be correct.
Which I love, though. I'm like, is this the main thing now? Because this is really cool. I mean, the other thing sounded really cool too. So like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is definitely what it is now for sure. I'm putting too much work into it at this point for it not to be, and I'm running out of time too. But so yeah, okay. Well, I think the whole evolution from like I guess the beginning of the whole Space Cat idea to now would probably take a long time. But to kind of like sum it up, basically, like it really just started as like I had this huge idea for this comic that I've been writing for years, like ever since I was a little kid, called Zam. And I've changed its name a bunch, but it is just so massive and so personal. But it's what I
Right.
started the 100 Days with, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. But I got a lot of advice from like from Gaz and Kevin and everybody kind of telling me like, don't do such a big project. To do a little project first. And so I
Right.
was like, all right, well, what's the littlest thing that I can do? And so the whole idea came from this our cat basically, and me just being weird. I would like pick him up and I'd fly him around the house and I would sing this stupid Space Cat song, like the theme of Star Wars. And when Mel would come home from work, I'd tell her these silly stories about the adventures that we had, and it was ridiculous. But I thought, all right, well, I'll make a silly story about that.
So it makes sense that like you would end at, winged, humans going through
Totally.
caverns and electric lizards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
Nice.
you know how things go. Like you start small, and then it kind of blows up after that, and you start getting more ideas and more ideas, and that's pretty much what happened. And I couldn't. I wrote a script. There's actually like a complete script that's like from beginning to end. It's about this little cat, and he's just this stray cat, and he shows up on this back porch of like this scientist and his wife, and they think, oh, this poor little cat, and it was this real cheesy kind of classic comic story where it's like, oh well, what good fortune, because we just so happen to be working on this serum that could possibly save his life, that kind of thing. And so they take him in and they give him this little like injection and they start putting him on a treadmill and stuff. And there's this secret society that's like trying to get the serum. And so then they break into the lab one night and the cat freaks out and runs and hides. And then like something happens, something bumps like a shelf and it dumps like a bunch of it on him. And he basically turns into this super cat and he beats them all up and saves the day. And I was like, well, that's kind of fun, but like, I don't want to make this comic. This is so silly. So I just kind of like left it and started rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And it blew up and it expanded into like being something a little bit more up my alley of like stuff that I would normally write. So it's got like all this conspiracy and all these like human elements and stuff. And that's basically what became the graphic novel. But again, it got out of control. And so without anyone telling me, I kind of told myself, like, you should probably work on something smaller.
Yeah.
The small idea got big. And so that's what started this whole webcomic idea was I decided to take the same premise of just like a cat, the idea of a space cat, only to do it in like mini comic form. So like something more along the lines of like these old He-Man mini comics I used to get as a kid that would be like small little stories, but based in like another planet. And I could kind of like play around with this idea of like where this space cat could have come from and like how he could have actually had like a decent origin story to end up in the situation that he's in the graphic novel. And like from there it just kept growing and it grew because of the concept. It grew because of things happening in my life, and I just didn't want to like box something in so much anymore and like say like this is what it is. I wanted to make it a little bit more free and open to interpretation. And so I guess that's where the idea of the desert came from, was because for me, like something I've always been drawn to the desert. I don't know why. I'm fascinated by it. This the open space, the isolation. You can go out there and there's just nothing for miles, and it brings me a lot of peace. And so I felt like I really needed some of that in my life right now. And not living near the desert, I said, you know what? I want to draw the desert. I want to draw a lot of desert so that I could go there. And that's really kind of where it's gone from there. So I'm kind of pouring a lot of like myself, my own little kind of personal struggles or whatever into this character. Some from my past, some from my present. And the basic like setup now is that he finds this cat. There's this. I'm not gonna spoil anything because it's kind of like interesting the way that it all comes about. But this cat literally like falls from the sky, pretty much, and they've never seen anything like it ever. And it really, really, really likes this kid, and so it's pretty much attached to him. But he doesn't want to stay at his home anymore. He wants to basically run away and go off on like an adventure, pretty much. And there's something that happens that drives him to do that, and this cat comes with. And that's pretty much it. Like, it's just so open to interpretation. I have some very clear ideas on like the people in his life that this is going to affect and what they're going to do because of it and how they're going to react. But other than that, I'm just kind of letting it go. I really just want it to be more of like an adventure, kind of, leave it open, give myself something that I don't have to like stick to so many rules for. And like, in the end, I know how it's going to end. And it's going to basically tell you where the cat comes from in the graphic novel. So that's all that I know. So yeah, sorry, I'm just totally like hijacked the conversation.
No. That's pretty much the question I asked. I think it's just interesting, like, why, as creative people, do we let all of our ideas run away with us? Like, what is that? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm the same way. It's just like everything becomes way more epic than it needs to be. And like, even this 12 stories thing, which I've said many times, it's just like, it was just supposed to be an exercise that was easy, and now it's like it's a straight up graphic novel, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that was the whole point. I didn't want to do a big, project. I wanted to, like you said, do something smaller, and it's just like it's impossible. I think, I don't know. Like, I even have other things, other projects that I have in mind that I want to do, that I'm trying to keep them small, but like as the more I think about them, it's like it's starting to grow. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
No, I wish I knew the answer, man, because it happens to me so much. It's like I can't do something small, but maybe it's not a bad thing. There's actually a lot of artists out there that are really really good at doing things very short and quick, and they're disciplined about making like a lot of little things. Like Thomas Clemens is he did the hundreds, and he has this comic Robot Friday, I think, that comes out every Wednesday and Thursday. I think it's at least twice a week,
mhm.
and he's huge about discipline and just sitting down at the desk every day and making a comic strip every single day. And
Mm.
for what he does, and the style of his strip, it works really well for him. And it's actually got kind of a long, overarching story to it as well. It's not just like short little bits every day. It really is like a long story. But then there's some people that operate differently, like like Jason Brubaker. He's a great comic artist as well, but you don't see him doing strips every day. He spends his time putting the whole thing together and then releasing it as a book. And I think some people just work differently. And I think we're all lucky if we could at least get like one good work in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So if it takes a long time, then so be it, I guess. But
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point. That's one thing I've kind of come to the realization of recently is, and on a little bit different topic, but still the same idea, is like I've always I was always like, I mean, I got into comics, during the 90s, which I heard you said you pretty much did too, and or at
yeah.
least, that was a big part of some of your influence and stuff, and it's like, Todd McFarlane, all this crazy detail, I
Hmm.
and like just tons of lines from most of the artists at that time, Jim Lee, even Rob Liefeld is, abstract as that's a nice way of putting it, abstract as he gets.
Abstract, yeah.
He still has like a lot of lines, and and just like all these people. And so, but getting older, and trying to think, maybe I can do illustration as a job or something. I want to maybe create a simpler style that I can do quicker, and stuff,
Yeah.
like not that actually is something that makes it quicker, but that's what, my thinking has gone at times. And I and also just the desire to be quick with my art and stuff like that. And I think I've come to the realization where it's like you're saying, like some people are better at doing short things, and some people are better at doing, longer epic things, and or
Hmm.
that's just what they're drawn to. And it's the same thing with me. I've kind of come to the realization that I might just be a guy who likes to do a lot of detail, and that's okay. And I might just be a guy who um, has to take longer than other people at doing certain things. And, it's going to take as long as it's going to take. And that's just
Yeah.
going to be the reality of it. And I should be okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I'm becoming a little more okay with letting it develop how it naturally develops. So, I kind of think that's similar point as like what you were saying.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point too. I think with any artist, at some point you need to be comfortable with who you are and how you operate. I think I don't know for sure, but I would say that maybe like one of the biggest symptoms of artists not finishing work is being discouraged about their process versus others' process. Like you might want to be quicker, but maybe you don't work as quickly as someone who works quicker, or maybe you want to take more time, but can't help but rush things more. and then knowing like, hey, you know what, I'm doing all right for how I operate, you know. I
Yeah.
think that can make a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, and watching your videos and stuff, and hearing you talk even now, you have kind of like a real relaxed way about you when you talk about these things, like almost like it seems like a wisdom or whatever. And I mean, I'm not trying to like blow your horn or anything, but I just noticed that about you, and it's really cool. And it's like, yeah, it's like when I watch your videos, I kind of feel like, okay, it's okay to just kind of chill out here and like and it's funny coming from you because you seem like you're such a workaholic, but at the same time it's like, okay, all right, take a step back, look at it, all right.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. That's really nice to say, because I feel like sometimes I'm really out of control,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of where it comes from too. It's like it's that whole disconnect of like knowing what you need to do, but not necessarily doing it all the time.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like that, you know. But yeah, it's I am a workaholic, and I have a lot of anxiety too. So, and Gaz has brought this up before too, and I think in that way he and I are kind of similar in the sense that like it's hard to relax.
Yeah.
So even if someone invites me to like go do something fun, it's like I have to psych myself up to go and have fun. Like, okay, you're gonna have fun now, and that's gonna be fun. Okay.
Right, right. See,
But then,
that's definitely something I do kind of see on maybe similar with you guys, and I think it's a really cool thing. And I'm not this way, so I kind of wish I was sometimes, but like I think you guys like you tend to set rules for yourself, and then
yeah,
really important for you to try to stick to those rules. And I'm more like, well, I'm gonna do 100 days of comics, and I'm gonna do a video a day. But if I don't do a video a day, that's okay too. Like I don't care. I'm gonna do what I want when it comes down to it. But I'm good, so I'm not good at. I guess I'm not good at following my own rules, so I just kind of quit setting them as much.
yeah. Well, that has its advantages too. Like, and you've actually, this is your second time doing the 100 days, right?
Yeah, but I didn't finish the first time, and
Oh, you didn't.
that is one rule I am set to do is actually finish it this time. But
Yeah. Well, and that's all that really matters. I guess it's kind of just making sure you keep at your goals, keep working towards it.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
there's a big difference with like you see a lot of people sometimes they'll and I'm totally guilty of this too, so I'm not like outing anybody at all. If anything, I'm
Yeah.
outing myself of like, starting a lot of projects and never finishing any of them. And
Mm.
like that's kind of what drove me to want to do the hundreds in the first place, is to like build that discipline, and like man, like watching Gaz, he is such an inspiring dude. Like
Yeah,
he
yes.
gets up every day and just does it. Like it doesn't matter. Sometimes he hates it. He's so angry about it, but he still does it. And like that's something that I'm trying so hard to imitate. Just that level of work ethic. I need to apply that to my own stuff, because it's easy when it's for somebody else and they're not going to pay you if you don't do it, or
Mm.
you don't have a choice. You have to have it done by tomorrow. But I've never been able to convince myself. Like because at the end of the day, it's kind of a lie. Like you're your own boss, so you could tell yourself, all right, you need to have this done by Friday, or else. And then like
Right.
you're telling yourself like, or else what? Like what?
Yeah.
You're me. What are you gonna do? Go watch Netflix? Yeah, whatever.
That's funny. Yeah, I agree. Gaz is a real inspiration. I mean, everybody, you guys all are really to me. And Gaz definitely. And I don't know. Have you ever seen did you ever see the episode? I had him on one time to Escape Artist podcast. I don't know if you ever saw that episode or not. It was a
Oh
while.
no, I didn't. I'll have to check that out. I
Yeah.
gotta catch up with so many videos. You and there's a few other people that have you've been doing videos for longer than the hundreds, right? You've got like a backlog of stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have like, I think I'm on like 600 something videos or something stupid. but
That's
like
awesome.
they've been for different things.
Mhm.
Like when I first started, it was for like music, and then I was doing sticker art videos, and then I was doing comics, and it's just crazy. It's not. It's like, yeah, it seems like I've been doing it for a long time, but I didn't stick with one thing. Oh, I was doing
Yeah.
designer toys too, so it's like it's not actually building really. I don't know, but yeah, that episode with Gaz, the thing that struck me was and I always remember this for some reason, is he mentioned something about like that he doesn't like the actual act of, I think he said it in his own videos, and then I talked to him about it, was the actual act of drawing. He actually doesn't like love that as much as like he always hears people like say that they just love actually drawing, and
Yeah.
for him it's more like a means to an end. He wants to have
Hmm.
books out or whatever it is. And I was just like, I kind of stopped him on that point, and I'm like, that can't be true. Like I was
Say it
like,
ain't
no,
so.
because like his art is really cool, and he obviously, how can you not like it? And I think the truth in some ways is he does but doesn't, and I don't know. I mean, I'll let him talk for himself. You know, like I said, you could check
Yeah.
out the episode, and you know, I don't know, but it's, I think what I mean by bringing that up is he really approaches it like a job,
Hmm.
maybe a job first, you know, and I think, I don't know, like I really love that. That's really inspiring to me, like and that's what I get from actually you, and like all these guys who are making a living doing at least something creative. um you know, and when I do put this into practice, it really helps me. Is almost like, sometimes I say it in my videos too, is like, I punched the clock today, I did my half an hour, you know,
Hmm.
like, and just that idea of punching the clock, like I go to work all the time, you know, I do my day job, and I mean, I'm not inspired to go to work and clock in and, you know, move a
Yeah.
bunch of heavy boxes and do deliveries to all kinds of random places. It has nothing to do with anything I'm interested in.
Right.
And, you know, but I do it. And, you know, usually some days I'm just dreading going in, but I do it. Clock in, and, you know, before, like, after about an hour of being there, it's like, you know, what were you freaking out about? It's okay. You're just, you know, it's not your favorite thing to
Mm.
do, but it's not that bad. You work with good people, and, you know, it's
Yeah.
cool, you know, and it's the same thing with art. Like, it's like you almost, the anticipation is just a monster. And then, like, when you just sit down and do it, it's like, okay, I'm all right. I'm going to be okay. You know?
Definitely. Definitely. It's like the fear of the canvas or something, and I have no idea why that is. Isn't that so weird?
It's so weird. The blank page.
Yeah, and it's like, you've stepped up to the plate before. You've made some cool stuff in the past, and you know what you're doing to a point at least. And
Right.
it's like there's this unexplainable like fear of like I don't want to start, but why? What is it? What's stopping me? I've yet to figure that out, man. That drives me nuts.
But you do it, man. You sit down and you do it. I mean, you always, it's like, it's funny because you're like, oh, I didn't get, you know, that much done today, but you know, I did these awesome drawings here, and like, and then you're like, oh yeah, and I also wrote for an hour and a half or something like that, and I'm like, geez, I'm just writing barely a half an hour. I'm like, like, oh man, well, you know, I'll get there.
But
So
I didn't
funny.
finish the comic in a day, Marshall.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
funny.
I don't know. It's hard, I guess. Sometimes we put our own kind of like expectations on ourselves, and I think when we
Yeah,
don't meet them, it's harder. Something like
absolutely.
that. But
But I mean, it's all relative. It all depends too on like, what certain opportunities you have or whatever. And I mean, to be honest, it's not like I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I'm never going to get anything done because look at what Mike or somebody else is doing. They're putting hours in. I'm actually not like too worried about it. I'm just kind of like, well, that's I have my half an hour. I'm really happy that I did that
Yeah,
because previously I was waiting for the inspiration and then getting too tired by the end of the day and not doing anything.
yeah,
So
yeah,
this is
totally,
better.
totally. That's something that's so hard for a lot of people too, and like myself included. Not too long ago, I get so stressed out about what everyone else was doing, and like really just got to think about what you're doing. Like I see some artists sometimes like I can feel it in my soul. Like if I start looking at art too long, I'm like okay, stop, because like
Mm-hmm.
you see these just amazing works, and it's like I don't know. I think it's an ego thing. Like Will Perry talked about it a lot in some of his videos about the ego getting in the way of progress, and it does, man. It really does, and it's good to get to that point where you can kind of just put it all aside and accept, all right, I may not be where they're at, but I will be someday, or like I'm doing good for me for what I can do today. Like that, like I used to get locked looking at some of that art, just like I'll never
Mm-hmm.
be able to do that, even like work ethic wise. Like sometimes I'll watch Gaz and it'll be inspiring, and sometimes I'll watch Gaz and I'll be like, oh my god, when will I ever be able to do that much work in a day? It's insane.
Yeah.
Or like Ox has already put out 5 comics now in the time that it's spent me to like just get clarity on one.
Yeah.
What? It's crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's really crazy. And like I maybe part of it is because you're a hard worker, it's like I think I think it's a big deal to get the first comic out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like even for Gaz, it took him a long time to get the first comic out, and even he was like, I wish it didn't take so long, but I have a feeling that 2 and 3 is going to come out a lot quicker. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It's like because the world is now much more developed to the point where now when he has to create, the horror number 2, um, he only has to create maybe 3 characters where before he was creating the whole world.
Yeah.
So he can kind of, all right, let's really start making some moves, with this. And probably I'm sure the same thing with Sam with Ox.
Yeah. Yeah, because Ox has even stopped making videos for the most part. He's just like nose down making his issues.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Sometimes you got to do that too, and that's kind of where I've been at a little bit with, my stuff is, okay, I'm not making the videos as much. I'm kind of just doing the check-in thing, because I want to work on the comic, and
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, I want to get the word out and stuff, but it's just you can only do so much sometimes.
Yeah. It's tough, man. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm really like, I just don't want to make a video because I didn't get done what I wanted to get done, or maybe I didn't get done what I said I was going to try to get done, and it's like, I don't know, maybe I get embarrassed or something. It's like, oh,
Mm.
I can't admit that I didn't do the thing I said I was going to do. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's tough, and I know I've dropped the ball plenty of times, way more than I'd like to admit, unfortunately. So, and it is tough because you set these things on yourself, and really the people who are watching are like, they're all probably like, I totally understand because I do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? It's like not that
Exactly.
big a deal.
Exactly. And then you feel silly for even, getting worked up about it.
Yeah.
This is weird. I can't draw anymore. What happened?
Are
Oh,
you
there it goes. For some reason, I had a little box selected over there.
right? Yeah, I guess Photoshop can be weird like that sometimes.
Oh, it is, man. That's like the bane of my existence is this little selection box. Like sometimes I'll leave it somewhere and I'll be like trying to color something.
Oh yeah.
Why won't it color? What is wrong with you? Oh, and I'll like restart the computer and then realize that, oh my God, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I've done that so many times with different
Yeah.
things. It's always like the obvious thing.
How's the tablet working out too? You've been using that a lot more lately, right?
Yeah, from time to time, but I've been actually sketching in my sketchbook more just because, you know, if I only have a limited amount of time, I don't want it all to be trying to figure out how to use that thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'll eventually do, like some kind of challenge to get me really better at doing it, like, kind of how you were doing the fan art every day
Yeah.
and stuff. Like, I think that kind of thing is really helpful for that stuff. And
Yeah.
when I have a chance, I'm gonna do something like that, I think.
Cool. You know what really helped me get used to this thing before I even started doing the fan art was doing uh daily figure drawing stuff. Like 30 minutes, you go to like Pixel Lovely or there's a few sites that'll do like slideshows of different models
Right.
and you only have like I think it starts at like 10 seconds and then it gives you 15 seconds and then I think the most it goes up to is like I think 11 minutes or something along those lines. But it's like just so quick that you don't even have time to do anything really. But
Yeah.
doing that every single day was really starting to help just get comfortable with just the tablet, because like you don't have enough time to really do anything but act on instinct, I
Yep.
guess. And so it kind of builds up that instinct. So there's less of a disconnect when you're drawing. But
So you did that with the tablet or just in general?
with the tablet, just with the
Yeah.
tablet.
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah, I never kind of thought about that because that is a good, it's a good exercise just to do even in your sketchbook. But yeah, doing it with the tablet, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've got to do it. I got to start doing it again, actually. Here's the place I was talking about. I don't know if it's showing up or not.
Oh yeah, I've seen that place before. Yep, I've
Yeah,
used that.
I just do, you check whatever you want, and then I'll do, I think it's class mode. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it tells you. So I would do like 30 minutes, 30-minute trainer one. I don't know why it won't show up. But yeah, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, and 11 minutes.
Mm,
And like, man, for weeks they were all turning out horrible. But after a while, I got a lot more comfortable with it.
right. Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Um, so what you're working on now, that kind of has to do with this whole idea of concept design as well. I know
Yeah.
that you said in your video it's all you're not maybe that's not necessarily your purpose with this, but I don't know, maybe you can explain kind of your method of what you're doing right now.
Yeah. This has a lot to do with concept, actually, right? Um, this was basically just well, I started doing that the SVS Learn. I signed up
Hmm.
for those courses upon your recommendation, good sir, to do that too. And I didn't get this idea from there, but they talk a lot in the couple courses that I've taken so far. I started listening to the one by Will Perry about composition,
Hmm.
and he talks about thumbnails, and Jake Parker talks about it a lot too. But like just this idea of like limiting what you have access to make a thing when you're like planning for the thing. So
Hmm.
like what I was trying to do here was whenever I started doing like here, I'll pull up what I was doing for concepts at first to just give you some context.
Hmm.
Um, when I was first started doing concept art, I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna dive right in and I'm gonna do, like a couple of these every day. These were the ones that I was putting out for a while, and like none of these were like actual designs that I was set on. I was just doing concept art, but it was like way too polished, and it really wasn't telling me much about, you know, the characters that I was trying to create, except like maybe these designs that I've got, you know. Um, and so I decided that, you know, the reason that was because I was drawing, and you know, when I'm drawing, it's different than get like a new layer. Like if I'm trying to make a character and I tell myself, all right, I'm gonna draw this character, then you know, I'm doing this. I'm like doing the little ball, and I'm planning and doing like my construction stuff to like get the pose right or whatever, you know, and like I'm spending a lot of, this is a horrible drawing by the way. Give him a top hat, why not? Anyways, you know, and that this whole process just takes so long, and it ends up being like a chore. It's like, all right, now I need to make a finished piece out of this, and I might as well ink it, and I might as well color it. I really wanted to just remove all of that, and so I was like, you know, let's just get like some basic tones. So I've got this palette that I've got up here. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, five tones, and two of those are one is pure white and one is pure black. And actually, I haven't used any pure black, so it's really just 4. Yeah, just 4 tones. And then just, you know, telling myself, you know, now you just need to worry about silhouette. You just need to worry about composition, and just, you know, play with that. What does that look like in this world, you know? And just doing that has really freed me up. And I feel like I've told myself so much more about the story doing this than any of the other concepts, because now I'm getting to see this character in action, and I'm getting to see, you know, like I'm getting ideas like, I don't know what's happening in here. Why is he in that hole? And why are they trying to stab him? That could be an issue. You know, what is that? And so, yeah, just using the silhouettes and stuff, I can work pretty quickly without having to worry about details, and actually end up getting more information from it. And that's pretty much it.
And it's quicker, and you're, as you know, it's kind of a little bit spoiler for the courses, but hey, what are you gonna do? You know, one of the things is they like, you know, they kind of harp on this in all the videos really, and it's been something that's really helped. Well, it's helped me in my mind. I don't know if I've practiced it yet, but you know, when you start drawing and you get into the details of things, you become invested in it to a point where it's almost like no turning back. Now you have to like finish it, or if something comes out wonky and messed up, now it's like, oh, you know, I just spent, you know, 2 hours on something that initially was just supposed to be like a thumbnail, you know?
And exactly.
And I'm definitely, I do that. And I've even gotten to the point where I'm thinking, I'm almost ready, like when it's time to start thumbnailing my comic, maybe I should just like literally like cut out some human shapes and like just start putting shapes on squares, and instead of getting into the drawing, because I know I'm going to be, I was actually talking to a friend of mine, because we have like this kind of drink and draw thing or whatever once a month, and he was telling me how, you know, he had to do something similar. People were telling him like people were wanting to buy his thumbnails because they were like little comics, like they were so detailed. And so it's like, wow. and
Not
it's
a bad
like
idea.
It's like, if you're gonna do that, then, you know, and he was saying like, and I would look at other people, you know, who would do like 6 or 7 thumbnails for each page, you know, of their comic to see which one they want to choose. And he's like, that would take me forever. Like I would never do that. But if you're just like you just gotta go in with like a Sharpie or something. Something where you can't do detail. And like you're doing, blocking it out with grays and just tones, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you were watching, but this whole background of these little spikies here, I redid like 6 times while we were talking.
Nice.
But I could, because, you know, there's nothing to them. They're just smudges, you know? But if I'd actually taken the time to like draw that out and get perspective right and all that, I'd be after putting in all that work, I'd be so much less likely to get rid of it. You know,
Right.
like, well, it might be wrong, but it took me 5 hours, so it stays.
Right. And you're purposefully, and for people who can't see this, he's purposefully like just using literally like on every thumbnail it looks like three colors. He said there's like five or so, but like it pretty much looks like three colors. And
Yeah.
um and it looks like you're using a larger brush. You probably
Yep.
can't really do much detail
Yeah.
with
When
the
I'm
size.
blocking in the backgrounds, it's all these large squares.
Mm.
And that's the other thing too. I've really wanted to use a square specifically because I felt like because it's supposed to be out in like the rocky desert and stuff, that it would automatically force me to use these more blocky shapes and
Oh,
think
that's
about
cool.
that, you know. Because if I use the circle, that's more like regular drawing again. That's like giving me too much control.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's in some ways I have done that at times. I in my sketchbooks, a lot of times I'll just draw with like a ballpoint, because it's like,
Hmm.
I can get, detailed with that, but I can't erase lines. So like all the bad lines are there still.
Yeah,
So it's like I can't get too precious with it.
yeah. I like that. I actually had a professor in college a long, long, long time ago now, but she used to. Wow, I totally lost the train of thought.
Well, I was talking about using the ballpoint pen for sketching and stuff, and
Yeah,
uh, you're talking
shoot.
about a professor who helped you with something.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but I know it had something to do with the ballpoint pens. She was really big on making us do things where we couldn't. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, she was really big on making us use materials that we couldn't correct our mistakes with. So like ballpoint pen or ink or whatever, and to just I remember. All right, it was an exercise where you get like a let's see, why isn't that showing up? There it is. It was an exercise where we had to draw, but we could never take the pen off of the page. So we had to like do these kind of scribble gestures of like, people that we would be drawing and just keep moving. That was the big thing, was like keep moving, don't stop, don't be slow, just, keep moving the pen. And we would do like just tons of these all day. And it was really weird, like at first, but it started to kind of loosen you up. And then, like this is pretty cruddy, but after a while, you would start noticing you would draw like a lot more dynamic stuff because you're making these crazy strokes and like I don't know, but that reminded me of that with the whole ballpoint pen thing, because it's another medium that you have to live with your mistakes. You don't have a choice about that, and I think sometimes imposing that kind of stuff on you helps. It helps to improve. It helps to loosen up. It helps to narrow the focus. I mean, especially when you start learning a bunch of stuff, it's hard not to try to incorporate all of it.
Yeah.
I want to do a piece of concept art now, but I also want to make a nice painting and practice the lighting that I've been learning, and and that can turn into hours and hours and hours, and like all you've got is one piece after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm learning a lot of that similar stuff too, and yeah, the continuous line thing. I've kind of done that that exercise actually when I was younger too, and I like doing that, and it's funny how like when you don't take the pen off the page, and sometimes the thing you make actually kind of looks cool.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah, totally. Especially if like you're that's like what you're planning to do that day, and you just zone out, and you can come up with some cool stuff.
yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of encouraging the spirit of play. Like if you can find ways to do that is really helpful.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's so easy to just kind of approach it and be like, okay, it's time to sit down, get serious, and let's let's get this graphic novel going. And it's like you can play the dramatic music and it's just like, oh man, and you just like get stuck. And it's like,
Yeah.
how about let's just start making some marks on the page and see what you can come up with and just play around with stuff. And you know, if you can get in that headspace, I think you can have a lot more success.
Yeah. It
I
starts
heard,
to get stressful if you take it too seriously too.
yeah, yeah. I heard one other technique that I thought was interesting. I don't remember whose approach it was. Somebody was talking about character design, and they were saying like that it had to do with like using reference and stuff. Because I get really stuck in the using reference issue
Hmm.
at times because I like to draw realistic, but when I'm
Yeah.
trying to draw comics and stuff, like I'm trying kind of not to draw realistic. And also, if I'm drawing from imagination, I'll just never be able to get those subtleties because I'm not looking at something. You know, it's easier when I'm looking and I can see those subtleties to, you know, replicate that on the page.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I'm like, okay, well, I have to draw this character in like a million different poses. I'm not going to be able to know those subtleties unless I actually take pictures of reference. But
Hmm.
I don't know. One technique somebody was saying is like when they draw, they don't really like always start, especially when they're designing. They start with no reference first, and I'm haven't been practicing this at all, but
Hmm.
they start with no reference, see what they can kind of come up with, and then they kind of use reference to help them when they get
Yeah.
stuck. You
Yeah,
know.
that's kind of like what I do. I'm having the opposite problem where I'm trying to learn to use reference more.
Oh, okay.
I got it and this is something that I've had to kind of learn
Hey,
exactly what it means to use it.
hold on one second. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in here. Mhm. Oh, sorry for that little intermission.
No
um,
problem.
I've stolen my wife's hair dryer for the longest time because she doesn't really use it, and I make watercolor paintings. So,
Nice. I'm like
uh,
that with Mel's sewing kit sometimes.
yeah, I should get my own hair dryer for paintings. But yeah, sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
I forgot what we were talking about.
um,
Oh, reference. It's about
yeah,
reference.
that's right.
Uh,
Do
yeah,
you,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I was saying I had the opposite problem. Yeah, um, I've been trying to kind of learn how to use reference because I haven't for the longest time, or at least I tried not to. It's kind of like again go back to the ego kind of stuff that gets in your way. It was kind of like that where I felt like if I had to use reference, then I wasn't good enough, which is stupid. And so the last couple of years, I've really just been trying to use it more. And now I'm like kicking myself. I'd love to go back like 10, 15 years and just slap myself around a little bit. It's like, what's your problem, man? But I agree with what you were saying, though. I do think it's good to try it first without the reference because then you get that organic kind of like the imagination kicks in and contorts the body and the scene in ways that maybe can't be done in reality. And then you kind of use the reference to just enhance that, or correct it in some cases. But yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. Reference is a tough one. I'm pretty sure Kevin Cross says to always use reference. Other people are like, never use reference. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's been rough mostly because like to me, drawing realistic is fun. Like and drawing like from reference is fun because like I don't know, I guess because I can make something look cooler than I can if I was gonna do it out of my head. But it's like I have to draw the exact thing I'm looking at, you know, draw the whole draw what you see thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm actually one of the classes in the SVS Learn thing, the one actually that I suggested to you. Like I said, I watched it again, and um, he, he does stuff from reference, and it's a whole different technique than I've done in the past, and it's been helping me. And then he also actually talked about like, okay, basically drawing a lot from reference is good because it informs the more illustrative stuff that comes from your imagination.
Yeah.
So if you've drawn a million faces, you know, you start to kind of know where the shadows would fall, you know, and stuff, things like
Yeah.
that. And
I can see that.
and also like when you are drawing from reference, even if the piece that you're working on is supposed to, you know, be representational, you can still exaggerate things. So he talked about like just certain features that seemed more important or interesting, and I guess that's kind of where you would come up with these kind of more detailed caricature type of drawings and things like that. And that was interesting to me too, because whenever I've heard anybody talking about drawing realistic or whatever, it's like it's always just copying the thing. And then I get frustrated. I actually get really angry when I see hyper realistic artwork. Not
Yeah.
like angry, but it just gets at me because to me that's like if I wanted something that exact, like I'll just take a picture. You
Right. I feel the same, and that's not to criticize the people that have that skill, because my God, that's just incredible, isn't
know?
it? It's like,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I do kind of feel the same, and I kind of I feel like a jerk thinking it sometimes, but I'm kind of like, what's the point? Like if it looks just like a picture, then at that point, why not take a picture? At that point, it's really just showing off technique, which is equally impressive, definitely. But
I
I think
think,
when it
oh, go
go ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say, like, I think the thing that bothers me is like I am impressed. I think it's really cool that they can do it, and I feel like I could do it too if I really, you know, put my mind to practicing it as much as maybe they have. But like to me, it's like I almost feel like I said, I don't want to judge the people who are actually doing it because it is amazing, but at the same time, it's like I almost feel like it's like, well, I'm trying to impress people, maybe. It
Yeah,
sounds really bad and judgmental, and it probably is, and I'm probably a jerk, which is, I guess, fine. Um,
it is. You're
but
you're horrible. This is
yeah,
over. I'm out of here.
exactly. But also, like, it frustrates me because whenever I hear like quote unquote non-artists, I don't like to use the word non-creatives because I feel like you can be creative in anything. It doesn't have to just be art or music or something like that. But non-artists like um they'll always be like impressed by that. Like I have friends who are like, you know, whenever I do something, I almost don't like to do realistic pieces because it's like whenever I do it, it's like that's when they're amazed. You know, if I were to like
Yeah,
throw up like some kind of Picasso, you know, abstract thing, they'd just be like, oh yeah, you're doing art, huh? And
yeah,
like but like if I do, or even if it's just a cartoony comic book thing, you know, unless it's super clever or it's a character they love or something, you know, it's just like, okay, cool. But like if I were to do some like realistic thing, it's like, oh, he can draw. Like
yeah.
it's
And
they
I
don't
think
realize that it's harder sometimes to do the cartoon stuff, you know?
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think it's a lot harder to do the cartooning stuff. I think
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely takes time and skill to do the realistic stuff, but I think doing things from your imagination and learning, you know, so much about the form that you can reduce it in an interesting way, I think that takes so much skill. I mean, like, look through like Calvin and Hobbes or Bone or, you know, a lot of like the really well-known kind of cartoony stuff. And like, there's so much information there that's going on that's not easy, you know. I think about the little Bone character. He's just a blob, but that blob has so much life and character and depth and dimension, and that is not an easy task. Yeah, but I go through the same thing, man. Like I have some life drawings that I hang on the wall from years ago, and those tend to be the things that people stop and stare at. And I've got all this comic art and stuff all over my, like, where my desk is at, and like they'll spend like a couple minutes looking at that. But they'll ask like, "Oh, who did these?" when they see the life drawings. I'm like, "Me." Like, "Oh, but I thought you did cartoony stuff." Like, I do everything. Come on.
You don't realize that you can, you know, an artist, I don't know, a lot of artists can do, like even Picasso, like he made a living off of his abstract, crazy, like impressionistic stuff. But he also could draw realistic, but no, you know, that just doesn't happen to be the thing that he became famous for. But you know, there are examples of where he did do that, you know. So I don't know. It's definitely a interesting, like, psychological thing, I guess.
Yeah, I would even say like that he had to do that before he could do the abstract stuff that he did.
Yeah.
You know, like he had to learn in order to be able to push it in a way that made sense.
Yeah, you know, the whole thing, you got to know the rules before you can break them, and it's definitely true. And I think the thing with cartoony stuff is knowing what to keep and what to leave out, and also implying things, because you can't draw everything, so you have to imply certain things, and it's just a lot harder to get across what you want to get across with less lines, less, you know, whatever, you know, detail, I guess is the thing.
Yeah, and that's been something that I've been practicing a lot the last couple of years, is learning to do more with less. And just I'm so I get really inspired when I see like work like Jeff Smith, for example. We were just talking about Bone. It's just so amazing. He's like so few lines, but there's so much there. Like you see a whole world through those few little lines, and that just amazes me. That takes so much skill. I really want to learn to do stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But going back to that reference thing really quick, I wanted to share a little bit here, because I've actually been using reference for the image that I'm doing now, which I don't know if anybody can see this or not, but I will show you the reference that I'm using. Copy this. I'm using, and so this goes with like what you were saying, where it's like more or less just to kind of influence the direction that you're thinking, and not necessarily like copying it verbatim.
Yeah.
You know? I just saw this and thought, wow, that's really cool, and then just kind of took it from there in my own direction. But like if I had just copied that, I don't think it would have been worth doing, because here it is. It's already there.
And that's actually the area where I get kind of stuck at, because, like, you know, like this guy right here, you know, that is different than the reference I used, but it's not that different. And like, I basically move the arms a little bit and stuff, and you know, but it's not super different, and I have a hard time. I have to make myself not make the reference look a lot like, I mean, the drawing look a lot like the reference.
But I think what you did there is still a perfect use of reference as well, because I have no idea what you could have found to do that. That looks like it happens in that world with that character, you know. It doesn't look like you've just like put a different costume on somebody online or something. Like it definitely It looks like its own thing for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And I mean, there is probably enough difference there. I definitely try to do that, but I guess everybody uses reference a little differently, but I would really like to be able to, I don't know. I think that's kind of a mark of, um I guess a less experienced artist sometimes is how if they take things more literal, or if things are a little more on the nose. um just because that, and that's the thing, even with like realistic artists, people who do like realistic stuff, like take like Jeff Lafferty for instance. Like, his stuff is very technically close to the reference a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing that I love is there's an artistry to it. That
Oh yeah,
it's not just straight up, look at this. It looks like a photograph, except for you can see some sketchy lines. It's like there's artistry. That a Jeff
definitely.
Lafferty piece is a Jeff Lafferty piece. It's not just a representation of what he was looking at.
Definitely. I feel like at some point the reference is just gone and he's just doing his thing, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's got his own style through and through. I'm really looking forward to his art book that he's putting out.
Oh,
I don't know when it's coming out, but I check my mail every day just in case.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to that, and all the Kickstarter things that are coming my way soon, hopefully.
Yeah. It's been a great couple months for Kickstarter for a while there.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I was supporting, I think, from the beginning of the year till this is like the first month, I think, that I haven't supported something. And
Yeah.
you know what, it's like awesome, but it's also like, oh, I have to, like, when certain people put something out, I have to support them. There's no
Yeah.
question about it, like, because they're my friends. And it's not
Mhm.
even that I'm doing it because I have to. I actually do like their stuff. Like,
Right.
if I'm just supporting and I don't like their stuff, like, I'll still support a lot of times, but I might not get the book or something.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, pretty much all my friends are inspiring to me. Like, sometimes I can't support, and it's like, it sucks.
Yeah. I know about that, and that's kind of how I feel about like the Patreon stuff. I wish I could support more people on Patreon, but just committing to that monthly is something that I don't know. Maybe I could do like $1 or something. I gotta figure out how it works, but
Well, Patreon's a different beast to me. I have actually much different thoughts than I think most people. I never hear
yeah.
anybody else say it, but like, the thing with Patreon, especially if you have your own Patreon, is I almost think it's unethical to support other artists, because if you're supporting other artists on Patreon and people are supporting you, expecting that the money that they're giving
Mm.
you is going to your projects, but it's actually going to other Patreon people,
Yeah,
then it's kind of
that,
an issue.
that's a good point. I never thought about that because I've actually had some different thoughts about Patreon as well. When you consider that it's supposed to be for your fans,
Mhm.
quote unquote fans, you know. And I
Right.
feel like as creators, like I like making friends with creators, and that's something that I've just always been like that. And a lot of the friends that I have are people that make stuff. And I feel like you get to a point where it's like if everyone you meet were obligated to support everything you did, like we would all be broke.
Yeah.
but but at the same time, like I do when I can, absolutely. But at the
Mhm.
very, very least, I like making sure that other people know about indie creators and know about, the indie films and stuff that I've worked on because, I want them to gain an audience. I want them to have support from people who aren't creators, who want to support everything they do and want all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm busy doing my own stuff, creating my own things, and I'm trying to build a following too. And I feel like the best gift that you can give another creator is to give them exposure, quote unquote, not the bad kind where it's like, hey, come work for me for free. But like,
You said the dirty word.
yeah, I know. I can't believe I said it.
It's funny, but it's true. I mean, everybody rags on the whole exposure thing, but that's, obviously coming from a different thing. It's like when people are trying to pay you an exposure or whatever, but
Yeah.
but yeah, absolutely. And I support people on Kickstarter. Even on Patreon, I do support a few people, but pretty much at the $1 level, and I try not to go beyond like the first 4 people I supported, because as I started thinking about it, I got to that point where I'm like, actually, you know what? This is kind of being unfair to my patrons. So I pretty much didn't, I won't go any further, but I'm not backing out from the people I started originally.
Yeah.
And I try to look for other ways I can support those artists. Can I buy their book or something, or, do their Kickstarter or something? I feel like that's a little bit different,
Yeah, definitely. It's tough, and all this stuff is so new. It's tough to really determine like the ethics of it all. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that if anybody is actually supporting you on Patreon, like as a fan, then I would assume that they think that their money is going towards helping you as well. And if it really is just sort of cycling between creators too, then no one's actually helping themselves either. If everyone's somebody's calling me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
If like everyone's giving everyone $1, say, and all anyone's making is $1, then nobody's actually ever getting that dollar. So
Yeah.
it defeats the purpose of it too. But I don't know. I mean, if I was making a lot of money and I had the money, I'd still support everybody.
Yeah.
I'd want to, but
I mean, it would be different if I was making like $500 or something on Patreon, and I wanted to support all my friends, which are like literally like 10 people or something. Then okay, I can I can see that, but like, I'm not there. I'm making. I think mine's at 20. It might have dipped down to 19.
Yeah.
That's basically paying for me to have Photoshop. So
nice. Yeah, I need new pencils and erasers, so
yeah.
I'm gonna start a Patreon though, and I know like I stopped trying to think about it too much because it was starting to like get in the way of creating. I was starting to worry about it too much, but I do want to start a Patreon for the webcomic because I feel like it'd be silly if I didn't.
Yeah, it's really an awesome opportunity. I think it's a kind of a game changer. Even I feel like it might even grow beyond, or grow to the same level as Kickstarter. It's just I really think it's a game changer. I actually, for myself though, am like weird about it for my own thing for some reason, because I want to focus on creating projects, and I feel like everything with all the social media and all this stuff just keeps taking me away from just creating my own projects. Even making videos and stuff. And it's like, maybe when I have more time, I can spend more time making exclusive Patreon content. But right now, I want to be spending time creating my projects and not spending time, editing videos and the stuff that I mean, I love doing videos. I love it, but you got to make priorities, I guess.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword too, because in a lot of ways I feel like if I didn't start making videos and I didn't connect with the whole hundreds group and you and everybody else, like I don't know if I would still be doing it. Like I know I would still be making stuff, but I don't know if I would actually be taking it as seriously as I am. And that, I don't know, it's hard to find the words to say what I'm trying to say, 'cause I've always been really serious about what I'm doing, but there's like that. There's like passion, and then there's practice, and I think I've gotten more serious about the actual practice since I've started doing the videos, because I'm much more accountable. You know,
Yeah, it's
it's
definitely that.
easy to like it's easy to sit on the couch and I don't mean to like paint the super negative lazy picture of anyone who's ever had an idea before, but like it's easy to sit on the couch and watch a TV show or whatever and think like, oh, I could do that, and if I did do that, I would do it like this. But it's a
Yeah.
whole different story to like sit down and make that happen, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Well, there's always that classic, story of, the guy who says, oh, I have this idea and it's so amazing and it's going to blow everybody away. And they just keep hyping it up and talking about it, but then you never see anything from them,
Yeah, yeah,
and I don't want to be that guy,
no,
I mean, I guess at least don't talk the talk if you're not going to walk the walk, which is at least I do that, but
yeah,
but
yeah.
still, I do have those epic ideas, and I don't want to be the guy who comes to the end of his life and is like, "Did you, you didn't even try,"
But yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I've started so many projects that I never finished. I mean, when I was doing the game design stuff, I was trying to make my own games for years, and I never finished any of them. And I mean, that always it really hurt too because I felt like I could definitely do it, but I just never had enough faith in myself. And like I would
Mhm.
work myself to the bone trying to put something together, and then I would feel like, oh, well, this isn't good enough. I'm gonna start something new, and this will be better. And
Yeah.
so you don't want to. I think it's tough because there's like quitting because you're on a train that's about to go over a mountain or over a cliff. There's
Yeah.
that kind of quitting, and then there's that quitting that's like a lack of confidence. But then there's that quitting that's just you're biting off more than you can chew kind of thing, or didn't plan properly or whatever. And I think that's that's probably like the one that I want to avoid the most. Is like
Mm.
embarking on something that I'm just completely and utterly not prepared for, which is totally fine. Like everybody's got to do that at some point to learn. Like when I set out to make my first game, I was like trying to make this epic RPG with all these different AI systems and stuff, and like I didn't even know how to program. And really, really quickly, I was like, "Yeah, this is more than I'm capable of. Let me tone it down a bit."
Yeah,
But
I mean that's kind of how it is with making comics too. It's like why like it's like you get all these crazy ideas, but like, oh, I don't even know how to color a comic, or I don't even know how to draw anatomy yet, or it's
yeah,
like you just
yeah,
think you can do all this stuff, and it's like, oh, I have to learn
yeah,
like 10 things first before I get to the first page.
yeah. It really is, and I think that's you have a bit of a heads up if you already know how to draw or you've already been creating in some way for some time, and like I kind of compare everything to everything else in some way. Like I think
Mm,
a lot of people say like don't start big, start small, and I totally agree, and I think it applies to every medium. But then I also feel like if you've ever started big when you should have started small, doing anything like say, I don't know, for example, like making a music album, right? Like you approach
mm,
making an entire album before trying to make one beat. And you learn that lesson of like, okay, this is hard. I should focus on the music. I should focus on the beat. I feel like you could still apply that same like lesson to say making a comic because you've kind of already learned that there's other pieces to things in general. You know?
mm. Absolutely. I mean, and actually, I'm actually going the other way with it because I've learned a lot about making comics. Probably, like it's weird because with my hip hop stuff, like if there's any skill I have, it's like writing lyrics. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's probably my most honed skill. Drawing is getting close to that though now, but still compared, it's like for some reason I just got I studied it, and I kind of figured it out. But like my approach to making an album or making beats or whatever, like I've gotten a lot of wisdom from all these comic book creators. I've learned so much, and now I am working on some music, and I'm going back to that, and I'm actually starting to use some of these principles with the music.
Huh.
Uh,
Cool.
yeah, and it's definitely helping because there's places where I get stuck with the music, but I forget that, oh yeah, I've learned ways around this, but I just don't think of it in a music way yet.
Yeah.
So I'm learning that, so that's good. But hopefully, I don't get too distracted. But still the priority is making the comic, and we'll keep doing that.
Yeah. And that's like the artist life, you know. I think everybody has different things that they do for different reasons, you know.
Hmm.
Like sometimes sometimes you do have to kind of step away and do a different thing for a little bit just to, I guess, like get grounded sometimes.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely,
Music
absolutely.
music especially. I mean, that's like that taps into your soul in a way that, you know, not many other things can.
Yeah, it's actually, and I think that's why a lot of artists are musicians and musicians are artists or whatever,
Hmm.
because it's really a fun thing to oscillate back and forth from, like
Yeah.
they're kind of two different. It's like the same thing. It's creative, but it's in a different way that kind of fulfills a different part, for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's got its own sort of storytelling, you know, in a way as well too. But it's like different kind of storytelling. It's like emotional stories.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of emotion to it. And there is to all art, but I think music is how you put more, you manipulate the emotion in a movie,
Yeah.
or, so that's one of the advantages that movies has over comics and illustration. We can't quite get get there as easily,
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but color, I guess, is a big way we do it, and tone, we're able to get emotion through that at least, but it's a little
That's
different.
true. You can go a little bit more of like a poetry sort of route too, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, prose, different ways of writing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. It's interesting. A lot of different tools to do similar things.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about comics is like as soon as you get away from like the superhero kind of stuff, you find so many different creative interpretations of the medium. It's crazy.
Mm,
Like
absolutely.
I love some superhero comics once in a while too, but like I really love indie comics. I think it's just incredible with some people like how people interpret the medium differently. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that I was telling people this weekend actually, like I think that's kind of the future of comics to a certain degree, or at least the expansion of the genres is kind of the future of comics, I think because, like Image and stuff, like they really have expanded beyond the superhero stuff, and they're starting to do pretty well with that actually, and that's I think it's so awesome. And I remember growing up, like I wanted to do superhero comics because the action and the dynamic
Hmm.
stuff and just the amazing stuff. What I'm realizing is you can do that with every genre.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't have to be, one guy punching another guy for it to be a dynamic, visually interesting image. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it can be a lot of different things. I mean, look how dynamic Sin City was, and that was, kind of a different thing, but still that was very action oriented. But I
Hmm.
mean, there's amazing, like that's kind of what I think is interesting about me doing this 12 stories thing is like some of these stories are like action oriented. Most of them aren't really, but I think that's going to be the fun part is finding a way to make it interesting. Like a story about a cat walking around a city. Like I have
Hmm.
plans for how I'm going to make it interesting. And it's like, I can't wait like to use
Yeah.
those limitations and create something cool.
Yeah. And that's stuff that would be difficult to pull off and have people take it seriously in like a film, you know? I think
Mm.
about especially with animals. I don't know, maybe this is just my own personal kind of opinion about it, but I feel like a lot of movies with animals, like live action movies with animals, just feel so weird to me. And like they enter into this realm of like family entertainment that's just kind of, it feels a little too fuzzy, a little too like you can't take it too seriously or go in any real serious directions. But as soon as you put that in a comic, it's like all that context is gone. You
Yeah.
can do something more serious and more playful and more artsy, than you can in that sort of medium.
It's
Because
kind of like the arrow with the boxing glove on it.
exactly, just like that. Although I will say that totally worked for me in the show. I love that. That was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought that was a funny story you were telling. I literally, I don't know anything about that character really, so I don't know. But like, I definitely got what you were saying, and I was chuckling while I was watching that.
I don't know like much about him either, but like the little bit that I do know was like enough to get me kind of interested in the show and to talk with Mel about it. And she didn't believe me, but there you go. It
Yeah,
happened.
it is weird, like how with comics, certain things can just, it's like it looks perfectly awesome on a comic book, but once you bring it into live action, it's just like, I mean, like even with the new Civil War thing, like a lot of my friends who aren't like super creative like comic artists, like my friends
Hmm.
who are not like comic artists so much, or aren't as much even into the comics, they kind of don't like the Spider-Man costume, but a lot of other people who are creators are like, that rocks, that's the way it should be, like.
Yeah. That's funny. I encountered the exact same thing. Some of my friends are like, they hate it. Like, what is it so stupid? It doesn't have any texture. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's awesome. Are you watching the same movie?
Mhm.
But yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder why that is sometimes. Like, do we, like, as creators, do we just have different sensibilities, and so we like things for different reasons, maybe?
It's just, I think, to me, in that instance, I think the culture just happens to be like, they want the gritty, they want the texture, they like, it's the whole thing with the detail thing, like people who make realistic art and people are super impressed by that. It's just, I think that's the kind of the obvious thing as somebody who maybe isn't a creator to that appeals, I guess, like.
Yeah,
And it might be like a cultural thing too. That whole dark movement still hasn't kind of run its
that's
course, I guess, and a lot of
true.
us creators are like, well, I kind of like the charm of the old like goofy stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know.
because
I
it's
like it all, really, to be honest.
oh yeah, yeah. Like everything's got its place. I think it does get a little boring when everything when a trend starts and it doesn't end. Like the
Yeah,
dark and gritty thing, man, that's been going on for so long now. I'm just
yeah,
over it. I want something happy for a change.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That,
Absolutely. And I totally agree. And, I probably wouldn't have thought that way if I because I was kind of going down, kind of down that route myself for a long time. But, I guess as you grow older, your sensibilities change a little bit. I used to hate Jack Kirby and now I love him.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. The big comic that I was talking about that I started the hundreds for is super violent,
Mm.
super dark. Like that is dark. But here I am making this fun little adventure comic about a cute little cat in a fun little desert world.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to finish that comic as well someday. I just that one's going to be one that I don't think I'm going to talk about it as much like I am with this. I think that's going to be more of like a personal kind of. I'm just going to do it in my own time, and then suddenly I'll have a comic, and everyone will be like, "What is this, man? Are you okay?"
Nice. I know you're like known for the goofy cat stories.
Yeah. Which
Now you're doing like Sin City, no?
yeah, dude. It's so ironic too, because it used to be the opposite. Like when I was younger, all my art was super dark, super violent, super scary, and so a lot of people knew me for that. And like as time went on, my sensibilities changed, my mood changed. I think like in the past, art was more of like a vehicle for me to express myself and to deal with some stuff. But like
Mm.
it became such a part of me that I wanted to find other ways that I could use it as a tool instead of like using it as a journal, I guess, or like a way to vent. And so then it started this huge shift where I stopped thinking about art for myself and started thinking about how can I make art that appeals to other people. And that's what really made the shift. And things just changing in my life. Mel had a lot to do with that. Like, just meeting her and being friends with her for a while before we actually started dating was, I don't know, I started understanding more about happiness and like what it meant to like let go of some stuff. And like then my sensibilities changed and my art changed and everything changed. And now I meet people that knew me back then and they're like, oh, you should draw me like this barbarian, like chopping this guy in half and like all this gory, crazy stuff. And like a demon coming out of his eyeball. And I'm like, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
no, isn't life hard enough? Like, do we really need to get so dark with
yeah,
all our entertainment as well?
yeah, exactly, exactly. You nailed it with that. Exactly.
So funny. There's actually a quote that I saw recently on the internet with Muhammad Ali said something about like, if if you see the world the same way you did, when you were like 20, then you're doing something wrong. Like you haven't
Yeah.
you haven't grown or anything.
Oh yeah.
And I
I
agree.
I can agree with that too.
So,
I could definitely agree with that too.
yeah. So, I feel like this every time I watch your videos and when we have our little comments and stuff, I feel like I could probably talk with you forever about all this kind of stuff. But, good stuff must come to an end sometimes.
This is true. We've probably been going for a long time, haven't? Oh my God, yeah, we have.
Yeah, it's getting close to 2 hours. I'm a little bit nervous on how I'm gonna, as far as downloading this and uploading it to my site, and
Oh my
I
God,
think it'll
what
be
have we
fine.
done?
Yeah, so funny. But yeah, we should probably bring this to an end. So let everybody know again, where they can find you and all that.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm at Mike Emeritz, Emeritz. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, YouTube, pretty much anywhere. Just my full name, you'll find me. I'm all over the place.
Nice. Cool. And yeah, and everybody knows my stuff is marshmakesart.com, docujawprojects.com, everywhere, anywhere you can find me. And yeah, that's about it with this episode. I really appreciate everybody watching and or listening. You guys rock, and thank you so much, Mike, for coming on. I'm glad we finally got to get this Google Hangouts thing going.
Yeah, man. Thank you. This is really cool. I'm really glad you had me on. I appreciate it. It was
Absolutely.
fun.
And again, especially, if you have something to promote, but anytime, if we can get together again, I'm more than happy to have you on again.
For sure. Yeah, dude, I'd like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, cool, man. So yeah, thanks again. And we will be signing out here for the Escape Artist podcast, and we'll talk to you on the next one as well. Sorry, my wife's asking me if I fed the cats. But that's cool. That's the way Escape Artist goes. We just kind of roll with it. So yeah, thanks again, and I will talk to you again on the next episode later.
Cool. Peace.
All right.